I remember the first time I really felt at home with someone. Not the easy, comfortable kind of home, but the kind that wraps around you, soft yet unshakable. That was Sophia. We were engaged, our lives intertwined in ways that felt inevitable, as if the universe had been quietly arranging our paths just to bring us here. The mornings started with her laughter spilling into the quiet corners of our apartment, the afternoons with coffee and whispered dreams, and the nights with a closeness so complete I thought nothing could ever touch it. I loved her in a way that made me raw. I trusted her with pieces of myself I hadn't even admitted to myself. Every smile she gave me, every touch, it pulled me further into a life I wanted to believe in entirely. I told myself that love was supposed to feel like this, unquestioned, limitless, absorbing. And for a while it did. But love isn't a perfect thing, is it? It doesn't come neatly packaged with guarantees. And somewhere, quietly, almost imperceptibly, I started noticing the small cracks. The way she'd glance at her phone with attention that didn't match her casual words. The slight hesitation in her answers when I asked about her day. Little moments I could have questioned, moments that whispered something I didn't want to hear. I told myself I was imagining it, that it was my own insecurity bleeding into the edges of our happiness. I didn't want to see it. I didn't want to dismantle the illusion I had built around us. Every evening, I would hold her hand and convince myself it was enough to feel her warmth. Every shared meal, every laugh, every careless "I love you" was a thread holding me in place. I was certain we were building something real, lasting. I never paused to wonder if the foundation beneath it was as solid as the dream I'd painted. Vulnerability felt like a gift I was giving freely, and I didn't realize I was also giving it to something fragile, something that might not hold. I look back now, and I see the way the cracks were there all along, subtle but insistent. The illusion of perfection, the idea that love could shield me from doubt or disappointment. It was just that, an illusion. And yet, at the time, I couldn't see it. I only felt the weight of my own trust, my own willingness to believe in her completely, to surrender to what I thought was invincible. It's strange how love can be so beautiful and so dangerous at the same time. How the very thing that makes you feel alive can also make you blind. I didn't know then that the first lesson wasn't about her. It was about me, about the way I chose to ignore the signs, the way I built my life on faith alone, without asking the questions that might have saved me from heartbreak. And maybe that's what makes it human, the courage to love deeply, even when you don't have all the answers, even when the cracks are already forming. Maybe the perfect illusion isn't about being fooled. Maybe it's about what you allow yourself to feel before the truth demands you see it. It started with small things. Things that at first felt meaningless. A missed call, a shadow in her eyes when she thought I wasn't looking, a vague excuse that didn't quite sit right. At first, I brushed them off. I told myself I was being paranoid. That trust was supposed to feel safe, untouchable. But deep down, something in me tightened every time she looked at her phone a little too quickly, every time she laughed a little too loudly at a message I wasn't meant to see. I didn't want to believe it. I didn't want the cracks I'd ignored to widen into something undeniable. My love for her was still vast, still unshakable. Or at least, that's what I tried to convince myself. But intuition has a way of whispering truths you don't want to hear, and mine was screaming. I felt caught between two worlds, the life I wanted so badly to be perfect, and the reality my heart was starting to sense. Ryan noticed before I could even voice it. He's the kind of friend who sees through the bravest masks. "Be careful," he said one evening, his eyes sharp, his tone heavier than the words. "Something's off. You know it." I wanted to laugh, to shake it off. But the thing about Ryan is he's never wrong. And as much as I loved Sophia, as much as I wanted to trust her completely, his warning gnawed at me. I began noticing patterns I had ignored before. Private messages that she would quickly close when I entered the room. Excuses that seemed rehearsed too well to be believable. Little shifts in her voice, a hesitation in her words. I told myself it was nothing. That love means choosing to ignore small imperfections. But the mind doesn't rest, not when your heart is being tested. And that's when the conflict inside me became unbearable. My love for her demanded faith. My intuition demanded truth. Every interaction, every smile, every affectionate gesture suddenly carried a weight I couldn't define. I wanted to confront her. I wanted to ask the questions to break the illusion. But part of me was terrified. Terrified that asking would shatter everything I had convinced myself was real. Ryan watched me struggle silently. One night, over the quiet hum of the city, he said, "You're holding on to a dream, not a person. Don't let love blind you." The words hit harder than I expected. It wasn't about losing her. It was about losing myself in the lie I refused to see. The tension built in silence. I began walking on eggshells in my own life, feeling every hidden glance and unanswered question as though they were physical blows. I wanted clarity, but I was addicted to the illusion of perfection. Every time she smiled, I felt both relief and dread, like the truth was waiting just behind her eyes. It's strange how love can be both a sanctuary and a trap. How someone who promises everything can make you question everything. I had to decide which voice to follow. The one that whispered lies I wanted to believe, or the one that demanded I face a reality I wasn't ready for. And in that quiet, anxious space between love and suspicion, I realized something terrifying. The perfect life I thought I had was never mine to hold. It was a fragile construct, and I was only now learning how dangerous it is to build happiness on the foundation of what you want to believe instead of what is real. I remember the exact moment my world shattered. It wasn't a shout, a confession, or a confrontation. It was quiet, clinical, almost mundane. A phone left carelessly on the table. A message I wasn't meant to see, an image that burned itself into my mind before I could even look away. And in that instant, everything I believed in collapsed. The life I had built, the dreams I had held close with Sophia, the future I had imagined, it was all gone. I felt shock first. Pure, paralyzing shock. My hands shook, my chest tightened, and the air itself seemed to turn against me. It was impossible. I kept telling myself it was a mistake, a cruel trick of coincidence. But the evidence was undeniable, unmistakable. The messages, the photos, the hidden life she had been living alongside mine. It was all there. And suddenly, every memory of our perfect life felt like a lie I had willingly swallowed. Heartbreak came next, slow and relentless. It spread through me like fire, burning everything it touched. I remembered her laughter, the mornings we had shared, the quiet evenings filled with whispered plans. Each memory now felt poisoned, a reminder of my own vulnerability, my own blindness. I had given her my trust completely, without question, without reservation, and she had betrayed it. The intimacy, the love, the honesty I thought we shared, it was all gone. Humiliation followed closely behind. There's a kind of shame that isn't about what you've done, but about what you've failed to see. I had been a fool, blind to the signs, a hostage to my own need to believe in the perfect illusion. I felt exposed, as if everyone around me could see the truth I had ignored for so long. And in that moment, I realized that love doesn't protect you from betrayal. Sometimes, it makes you more vulnerable, more human, and painfully aware of your own weaknesses. Ryan was there. He always was. He didn't offer empty words or try to shield me from the reality I now faced. He stood with me in silence, letting me feel the storm in its entirety before speaking. "You can't blame yourself for this," he said finally, but even his voice couldn't fill the void I felt. He was my anchor, but I was adrift, alone in a sea of betrayal and despair. And then Zach entered the picture. He wasn't meant to be part of my story, but he was a stark reminder of what I had lost. A name, a face, someone who had taken the space in her life I thought belonged solely to me. I didn't hate him, not really. I hated the fact that he existed in my life at all. I hated that he was proof of everything I had ignored, everything I had failed to see. I walked through our apartment as if it were a stranger's home. The walls, once warm and familiar, now felt cold, judgmental. Every photograph, every trinket, every ordinary object became a cruel echo of the life I had believed in. I wanted to scream, to throw everything into chaos, but my body wouldn't obey. My mind was caught in a loop. Images, words, memories colliding violently, refusing to let me go. In that devastation, I felt something I hadn't expected. Clarity. Not relief, not peace, but clarity. For the first time, I could see my life without the veil I had held on so tightly. I realized how easy it is to lose yourself in someone else, to let your identity be consumed by trust, love, and hope. And I realized that now, there was no turning back. I couldn't go back to the person I was before. The pain, the betrayal, the humiliation, they had changed me. Ryan stayed by my side through all. He didn't offer solutions, because some wounds aren't meant to be patched with advice. He simply reminded me that I wasn't invisible, that even when everything fell apart, I could survive it. And somewhere in that, I began to understand that survival wasn't about ignoring the pain. It was about facing it, letting it reshape me, letting it fuel a part of me I hadn't known existed. I felt utterly alone, yet strangely alive. The breaking point isn't a single moment. It's a series of fractures that force you to confront yourself. It's staring into the abyss of someone else's betrayal and realizing that the abyss is not what defines you. It's your response to it. And I chose, in that suffocating, agonizing moment, to refuse to let the betrayal become my identity. The life I thought I had with Sophia ended that day. The illusions, the dreams, the laughter, all gone. But from the wreckage, I began to see a path forward. It was uncertain, terrifying, and entirely mine to walk. I had been broken, yes, but in the breaking, I had found something I had never known, the raw, unfiltered truth of my own resilience. And maybe that's the cruel lesson of love and betrayal. It can destroy you, yes, but it can also reveal you. It can strip you of everything you thought mattered and leave you standing, raw and real, facing a world that will never be the same. And in that confrontation with truth, I understood something that no comfort, no illusion, could have ever taught me. You are defined not by what is taken from you, but by how you rise after it falls. I confronted her that night. Every step I took toward our apartment felt heavier than the last, as if the air itself was trying to warm me away. My hands shook, my heart raced, and every instinct screamed at me that nothing could prepare me for what I was about to face. And yet, I needed to see it for myself. I needed to hear it from her lips, to witness the truth that had been hiding behind her smiles for months. When I finally spoke, my voice was raw, trembling with disbelief and rage. "How long?" I asked. "How long have you been lying to me?" I didn't need the details, not yet. I needed acknowledgement, a shred of honesty. Anything to confirm what my eyes had already seen. Her reaction froze me in a way I hadn't anticipated. Cold, dismissive, mocking. The woman I had trusted with every piece of my soul looked at me as though I were an inconvenience, a joke. There was no guilt, no apology, no flicker of regret, just a sharp, cutting amusement at the pain she had caused. The betrayal became physical in that moment, a weight pressing into my chest that left me breathless. I felt the ground tilt beneath me, and I realized fully that the life I had imagined with her was gone. I wanted to scream, to shake her, to demand that she feel what I was feeling. But I couldn't. My body was numb, my mind spinning, and my emotions were too jagged to form words. I felt abandoned, utterly alone in the ruins of what I had believed to be unbreakable. Every memory of her now carried a sting, every shared dream a hollow echo. I had given her everything, and she had returned it to me in fragments of mockery and dismissal. I left the apartment that night feeling hollow. The streets blurred around me as I walked, my thoughts a cyclone of anger, disbelief, and grief. The city felt distant, unreal, as though I were wandering through a world that no longer had a place for me. I had loved blindly, trusted fully, and in return, I was left with nothing but shards of a life that had never truly existed. Maya found me not long after in a small, quiet cafe where I had sought solitude. She didn't ask questions at first. She didn't need to. She just sat with me, letting the silence stretch between us, letting me cry, letting me rage, letting me be a man unmade by the woman I thought I could trust. There was a gentleness in her presence, an understanding that didn't demand explanation, that didn't judge my brokenness. For the first time in days, I felt a tiny spark of relief, not from forgetting the pain, but from having someone witness it, from knowing I wasn't entirely alone. I told her fragments of the story, each word catching in my throat. She listened, truly listened, and in that simple act, something shifted inside me. I realized that while Sophia had shown me betrayal and abandonment, Maya showed me that connection could still exist. That even in the wreckage, someone could see the pieces of you and not flinch. Her presence didn't erase the heartbreak, didn't fill the gaping hole Sophia had left, but it reminded me that life doesn't end when someone betrays you. Life continues, and maybe, just maybe, there are people who could walk beside me through the ruins, who could help me rebuild, not with illusions but with honesty and care. It was a bitter, confusing feeling, gratitude tinged with guilt, hope laced with fear. I wasn't ready to think of anyone in that way, yet there was something undeniable in the way Maya simply stayed, without expectation, without pressure. She gave me something I had almost forgotten, the sense that someone could care for me, for who I truly was, not for the idea of the perfect life I had once imagined. I left the cafe that night with a weight still pressing on my chest, but a small ember of something new flickering within me. Pain still filled me, anger still surged, and loss still haunted every step. But somewhere in that haze, I caught a glimpse of what life could still hold. Authentic, messy, painful, and real. I realized that the world didn't have to be defined by the people who betrayed me. It could also be shaped by those who showed me kindness when I needed it most. And I understood, maybe for the first time, that being broken doesn't mean being finished. That even shattered dreams leave fragments that can catch the light. That even after betrayal, there can be moments of truth, of comfort, of connection. Maya wasn't the solution to the wound Sophia had left, but she was a reminder that not everything beautiful had been taken from me. That some things like trust, like empathy, like the quiet presence of someone who truly sees you, could still exist even if I had thought my world had ended. And in that fragile, fleeting realization, I felt the tiniest hint of something worth holding on to. That even after the deepest hurt, life could still offer a hand to help you stand. Pain has a strange way of sharpening you. At first, it consumes you, drags you down, makes every breath feel heavy, every thought unbearable. But then, slowly, almost imperceptibly, it changes. It becomes a blade instead of a weight, a fire that doesn't destroy, but forges. That's where I found myself after Sophia and Zach. Heartbroken, humiliated, abandoned, but alive. And something inside me stirred, a quiet, relentless determination. I realized that the life I thought I had was gone, but the man I could become was still mine to shape. I didn't want pity. I didn't want comfort or half-hearted apologies. I wanted control. I wanted power over the chaos that had been forced into my life. And so I began rebuilding, piece by piece from the ground up, financially, socially, emotionally. Every skill I neglected, every relationship I had ignored, every opportunity one had taken for granted, I started reclaiming them. Revenge, I understood, didn't have to be loud. It didn't need to be dramatic or violent. It could be subtle, deliberate, surgical. Sophia and Zach had toyed with my trust. They had laughed at my vulnerability, but I didn't need to stoop to their level. I would rise above them while exposing the truth in a way they wouldn't see coming. Every interaction, every casual mention, every piece of undeniable evidence I left in their path would be a quiet, constant reminder that nothing stays hidden forever. The betrayal at work added fuel to the fire. Adrian, a colleague I had trusted, someone I had considered a friend, had undermined me at every turn, seizing opportunities that should have been mine. At first, it felt like the universe had decided to test me endlessly, to break me in every way possible. But then I realized something important. Betrayal wasn't the end, it was a lesson. Adrian, like Sophia, had shown me who they really were. And I could use that. I could turn every slight, every deception, into a tool to rebuild, to grow stronger, to expose the weakness of those who thought they could stand in my way. I started with myself. I woke up earlier than I had in years. I trained harder, thought sharper, moved faster. Every small victory became a brick in the foundation of the new me. I networked strategically, learning who could help, who could influence, who could bear witness to truth when the time came. I was building a life that wasn't dependent on anyone's honesty or loyalty, because I had learned the hard way that those were gifts you can't rely on. And through it all, the anger never left, but it transformed. It became focus. It became precision. I didn't want to hurt Sophia or Zach blindly. I wanted to dismantle the illusion they had built, exposing them with the same cold clarity they had used to hurt me. Every encounter I had, every step I took was measured. I kept my emotions close, my mind sharper. I let the world see nothing of the storm inside me, but I felt it always driving me forward. Revenge wasn't just about them anymore. It was about reclaiming every piece of myself I had handed away, my dignity, my confidence, my ambition. Adrian's treachery reminded me that betrayal comes in many forms. Not every enemy wears a malicious face. Some smile at you, shake your hand, and stab you where it hurts. But knowing that doesn't weaken you. It strengthens you if you choose to let it. And I did. I planned carefully, patiently. Sophia and Zach thought I was broken, that my life had ended when they took what they could. But they didn't see the transformation happening in silence, in the shadows, in every calculated step I took toward becoming someone they could no longer ignore. Every deal I secured, every connection I forged, every move I made toward independence was also a move toward truth. I was building a life that could withstand deceit, that could outlast betrayal, that could eventually shine a light on everything they had tried to hide. And in that, I found something unexpected: satisfaction. Not the petty kind that comes from hurting others, but the satisfaction of knowing that I could rise, that I could reclaim myself, that I could turn the pain into power. The seeds of revenge were planted not in hate, but in self-respect, in relentless effort, in the quiet certainty that the truth has a way of revealing itself, no matter how carefully it is buried. I wasn't the man they thought they had left behind. I was sharper, stronger, wiser. And when the time came, Sophia and Zach would see the cost of their choices, not through confrontation, but through the undeniable reality of a life rebuilt, a person unbroken, a storm they never saw coming. Revenge, I realized, isn't about destruction. It's about transformation. It's about taking everything that tried to break you and using it to forge something stronger, something lasting. And as I stood in the quiet of my own resolve, I understood that this was only the beginning of a life I should have always lived. I didn't realize how heavy the weight of betrayal could be until I began to lift it myself. The anger, the heartbreak, the humiliation, they had consumed me for weeks, months even. But then Natalie appeared, not as a savior, not as someone who could erase the past, but as a guide. She didn't tell me to forget, didn't offer empty platitudes. She made me face myself, my pain, my choices, my scars. And slowly, painfully, I began to rise. It started with small things. Waking up on my own, forcing myself to move through the day with intention instead of inertia. Taking stock of a life I had abandoned while I mourned what I had lost. Natalie taught me to see strength not in the absence of weakness, but in the way you confront it, piece by piece. I began to understand that emotional growth isn't fast, and it isn't neat. It is messy, uncomfortable, and relentless. And I welcomed it because it was mine. Confidence didn't come overnight. I stumbled. I fell back into self-doubt more times than I can count. But each time, I stood up, steadied myself, and kept moving. Natalie reminded me that growth is cumulative. Every effort, no matter how small, compounds. Every step forward, no matter how hesitant, is progress. Slowly, I rebuilt the man I thought I had lost. The man who could stand tall without relying on someone else's approval. The man whose worth wasn't tied to a love that had betrayed him. Maya's presence became my anchor. She didn't try to fix me or shield me from the truth. She simply existed in my life as a constant, quiet support. Her laughter, her patience, the way she listened without judgment, it grounded me in reality, reminded me that not everyone in my life would abandon me when it mattered. She became the safe space I had been craving, the reminder that connection can exist without betrayal, that trust is something you can rebuild if you choose carefully. Gradually, Sophia's shadow began to fade. I didn't need to seek her out, didn't need to watch her from a distance, didn't need to obsess over what she had done. With each day, with each achievement, with each honest conversation and hard-earned success, I let go a little more. I realized that detachment isn't about forgetting. It's about accepting that someone else's choices no longer control your life, no longer dictate your happiness. Work became a place of transformation as well. Every challenge I faced, every obstacle, every betrayal, like Adrian's from before, was fuel for my growth. I didn't let setbacks define me. I didn't let other people's deceit or manipulation shape my self-worth. Instead, I learned to turn it all inward, to channel frustration into action, doubt into preparation, anger into focus. Every small victory reminded me that I was no longer the person who had crumbled under betrayal. I was someone stronger, someone sharper, someone in command of his own life. Natalie's guidance taught me another lesson. Emotional growth is more than just surviving. It's thriving. It's learning to take the chaos of your past and use it as scaffolding for the future. It's understanding that trust, once broken, can be rebuilt carefully, but only if you first trust yourself. And I began to trust myself again for the first time in years. Maya's support reminded me that human connection doesn't have to be a trap. That love and care exist outside of betrayal. I began to see the world differently, not as a place where people will inevitably hurt me, but as a place where people could lift each other, where loyalty could coexist with authenticity. Slowly, the fear and anxiety that had dominated me after Sophia started to dissolve, replaced by patience, understanding, and quiet confidence. I began setting goals for myself. Not revenge, not obsession, not even proof of worthiness, but goals rooted in who I wanted to be. Physically, mentally, emotionally. Every step I took toward those goals was a step away from the past, a step toward a life I could finally claim as my own. The ashes of betrayal and heartbreak weren't just behind me. They were beneath me, the foundation for the new life I was building. And in that rebuilding, I discovered something profound. Resilience isn't about never breaking. It's about standing up after you have, about walking forward when the world seems determined to keep you down. It's about choosing to rise, even when the path is unclear, even when the pain is raw, even when the future feels uncertain. Sophia, Zach, Adrian, they became parts of the past I could acknowledge without letting them poison my present. And Maya, Natalie, the support and guidance I had allowed into my life. They became reminders that even in the aftermath of destruction, something beautiful can emerge. That even after betrayal, heartbreak, and humiliation, life has a way of offering redemption if you are willing to fight for it, piece by piece, day by day. I'm not the same man I was when Sophia left. I am stronger. I am sharper. I am awake. And for the first time in what feels like forever, I can see the horizon clearly. The ashes are still there, yes, but they no longer weigh me down. They're the soil from which the new me has grown. And this time, I will not be broken. I didn't have to act. I didn't have to plot or scheme. I didn't have to seek revenge or orchestrate some elaborate plan. Karma has a way of moving quietly, inevitably, and I began to witness it in ways I could never have imagined. Sophia, The woman who had once held my heart like it was hers to crush started to unravel before my eyes. It wasn't dramatic or sudden. It was subtle, like cracks spreading through a glass I had once thought indestructible. People who had trusted her, admired her, now saw the duplicity I had lived through. Doors that had once opened easily for her now closed without explanation. Conversations that had been warm became curt and awkward. Invitations she had taken for granted were quietly rescinded. The world she had believed she controlled was slipping from her grasp, and there was nothing I had to do to make it happen. Zach, the careless shadow in her life, stumbled too. Every lie he had woven, every overreach he had taken, every advantage he had tried to claim began to twist back against him. I saw it in the way colleagues turned cold, in opportunities evaporating, in the slow, unmistakable recognition that the choices he had made to hurt others were now catching up with him. And Adrian, with his sly betrayals at work, found himself isolated, exposed, and powerless in ways he had never imagined. Watching it all unfold, I felt a strange clarity. There was no satisfaction in gloating, no pleasure in pointing fingers or rubbing wounds in a public view. I didn't need to take any credit. What I saw was the natural consequence of choices, the undeniable truth that what you put into the world, you often receive in return. And in that understanding, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time: peace. It wasn't about justice in the courtroom sense. It wasn't about revenge or punishment. It was about balance, about cause and effect, about seeing life restore itself without interference, without malice, without my involvement beyond bearing witness. And that alone was enough to soothe the lingering ache in my chest. I walked through my days now with a lightness I hadn't known in years. The weight of betrayal had been replaced with freedom, the freedom to focus on myself, on the life I was building, on the people who had stood by me when it mattered. Maya, Natalie, Ryan, they were constants in a world that had once felt treacherous. And I realized that the truest form of karma isn't what happens to others. It's how it allows you to reclaim your own life. I thought back to the months of pain, the heartbreak, the humiliation, the sleepless nights when anger and despair had threatened to consume me. I remembered standing over the fragments of the life I had once imagined, wondering if I would ever feel whole again. And now, as I watched the world correct itself, I understood that healing had been the true victory all along. Sophia's downfall didn't make me powerful. Zach's failures didn't make me superior. Adrian's exposure didn't make me righteous. What it did do was confirm something I had already begun to feel. The world has its own way of balancing the scales, and I no longer needed to be a pawn or a prisoner of anyone else's choices. I could simply live, grow, and rise. And as I stood there, observing without malice, I realized that peace is not about control. It's about acceptance. It's about letting life unfold in its own way, trusting that truth and consequence operate independently of your desire for revenge or retribution. In that trust, I found calm. In that calm, I found strength. And in that strength, I felt the freedom to finally close the chapter on the person who had caused me so much pain. The lessons of betrayal, heartbreak, and loss had been harsh, but they had shaped me. They had forced me to confront the depths of my own resilience, to discover what I was capable of, and to learn that true power comes not from vengeance, but from transformation. Sophia, Zach, Adrian, they were part of my past, echoes of storm I had weathered. And the world, in its quiet, unyielding way, had delivered justice without fanfare. I smiled quietly, not because I had won, not because I gloated, but because I understood. I had lived through betrayal and survived. I had rebuilt myself in the ashes. And now, I could step into a life defined not by the treachery of others, but by the clarity, strength, and peace I had cultivated within myself. Karma had moved, but it wasn't about them. It was about me finding the freedom to rise. And for the first time in a long time, I felt whole. I never thought I would reach this moment. Not without scars, not without lingering doubts, not without carrying the weight of every betrayal, every heartbreak, every shattered dream. But here I am, standing at the edge of something new. The sun isn't just rising outside. It feels like it's rising inside me, lighting corners of my heart that I thought would remain in shadow forever. Looking back, I can see the journey clearly now. Every moment of pain, every sleepless night, every tear I shed, they weren't punishments. They were lessons, hard and relentless, but lessons nonetheless. I learned about trust, about the cost of giving too much to someone else, about the strength that lives quietly inside a person when they are forced to confront the worst of life. I learned that vulnerability isn't weakness. It's the raw material from which resilience is forged. Maya has been by my side through much of it. Not as a cure, not as a distraction, but as a presence that reminded me that connection doesn't have to hurt. There's a subtlety in the way she offers her support, the casual touch, the soft glance, the quiet listening that never judges. And yes, there's a hint of something more, something I feel but do not rush into. I remain cautious because I've learned the hard way that trust must be earned carefully and intentionally. But even in that caution, there's comfort. Even in that restraint, there's hope. Fiona entered my life as another quiet reminder that growth often comes from unexpected places. Her perspective, her calm strength, her ability to see the world with a clarity I sometimes envy. It helped me reflect on what I had endured and what I had become. She didn't offer solutions, didn't tell me who I should be. She simply allowed me to see myself as I was, and as I could be, and that is a rare gift. I've come to understand that the past doesn't define me. Sophia, Zach, Adrian, the echoes of their choices exist only as markers of lessons learned, not chains that hold me back. I have carried the weight, faced it, and laid it down. The anger that once consumed me has been replaced with focus. The heartbreak that once threatened to drown me has been replaced with clarity. The humiliation that once made me feel small has been replaced with a quiet, unshakable strength. I still feel the sting of betrayal, the memory of the lies, the ache of the absence of the life I thought I had. But those feelings no longer control me. I am no longer a prisoner of what was done to me. I am the architect of what I choose to build. And what I am building now is a life rooted in honesty, in intention, in the knowledge that my happiness depends on me, not on anyone else. Maya's presence reminds me that life can be gentle too. That love doesn't have to be explosive to be meaningful. That trust can be given carefully and received with respect. There's a subtle affection between us now, a lingering touch, a quiet smile, a shared moment of understanding that suggests the possibility of something new. And I allow myself to feel it, slowly, cautiously, aware that the heart is strongest when it moves with awareness and not blind impulse. Looking forward, I feel ready. Ready to face challenges without fear. Ready to embrace opportunities without hesitation. Ready to accept that life will always carry uncertainty, but that uncertainty can be met with courage and clarity. I have been tested, broken, rebuilt, and strengthened. And now, I step into the future not with anxiety or doubt, but with confidence and resolve. A new dawn isn't just the rising sun. It's the realization that even after the darkest nights, light returns. It's the knowledge that pain, loss, and betrayal are not endings, but the beginnings of something stronger, wiser, and more profound. And I carry that understanding with me as I move forward, as I open myself to growth, to connection, to life itself. I am not the same person I was at the start of this journey. I am tempered, aware, resilient. I am cautious but not afraid. I am hopeful but grounded. And as I take each step forward, I feel the first real sense of freedom I have known in years. A freedom born not from escaping the past, but from understanding it, accepting it, and choosing to rise beyond it. The horizon stretches ahead, endless and unbroken, and for the first time, I feel ready to meet it. Not as a man defined by loss or betrayal, but as a man who has endured, learned, and grown. A man capable of hope. A man capable of love. A man finally free.